Okay, today we're going to continue with imaginary numbers, and today we're going to learn how to multiply two complex numbers by using FOIL, the double distribute method, or the box method. Please make sure that you take out a sheet of loose leaf paper if you chose not to print out these notes. So to multiply imaginary numbers or complex numbers, the first thing that you want to do is simplify any negative radicals. After that, depending on the question, you're going to either distribute or FOIL double distribute or use the box method. Then you're going to simplify any I squareds to -1 and then combine like terms if you can. So we're going to start simple and we're going to start by using the distributive property. If you wanted to simplify the first term, we're going to distribute. We're going to multiply this times this. So 2 times 3i squared is 6i squared. And then go to the next term. 2 times 2 is 4i to the third. Now when we see i's, we need to simplify them. Remember, if you go on your calculator and you go math, then go over to num, then go down to I part, then you're going to hit second and the decimal button, then you're going to hit the caret button, and then you're going to type in the power. So I squared in your calculator is -1. So this becomes 6 times -1. And I to the third on the calculator is -I. Now if I simplify that, -1 times 6 is -6. And then 4 times -I is -4i. That is your answer. If I look at the second example, 3i times 4i to the fourth is 12i to the fifth. 3i, remember we add exponents, times -5i to the seventh is -15i to the eighth. We're going to then use these steps up here to simplify our I powers. We're going to get that I to the fifth is I, so 12 times I, and I to the eighth is 1. So if I multiply 12 times I get 12i, and -15 times 1 is -15. Usually for this one, we write the whole number first and then the I term second. So I would just flip that order. Make sure you leave the sign with the number. So it's -15 plus 12i. If I look at the third example here, again, I'm going to distribute. 4i squared times 4i is 16i to the third. 4i times 2i to the third is 8i to the fifth. If I use my calculator, I to the third is -I, and I to the fifth reduces to an I. So now this becomes -16i plus 8i. If you notice, they're both an I term, so I can add them together. -16i plus 8i is -8i. I'll accept this as an answer. However, if you get to an upper level math class, if it says in simplest a plus bi form, you have to put a 0 in front. So technically, it's 0 minus 8i because you need your real number, your whole number, and your imaginary number, your I part. Now here's where things get a little more complicated because we're multiplying two terms by two terms. You have one of two choices. For those of you that like the box, you can do the box. And we would write a 3, sorry about that, a 3 and an I here, and a 2 and a -I here. If you want to, you can also do double distribute. You can go here, here, then here, then here. So 3 times 2 is 6. 2 times I is 2i. 3 times -I is -3i. -I times I is -I squared. Now, I squared is really -1. So in this last box down here, we have a -1. So that's really a +1. So if I combine like terms from that box, I have a 6 and a 1, that makes 7, and 2i minus 3i is negative I, or negative 1i. If I look at this example, this little squared here is a fancy way of saying write that thing twice. So I'm going to scribble this out, and I'm going to write 4 plus 3i. Now again, you can either double distribute or do the box. I've noticed most kids tend to prefer the box lately. So we're going to make our box, and I've got a 4 and a plus 3i and a 4 and a plus 3i. 4 times 4 for this box, we get 16. 4 times 3i for this box, I get 12i. 4 times 3i for this box is another 12i. 3i times 3i is 9i squared. Now again, I squared is negative 1, so that box really becomes 9 times negative 1, which is negative 9. Now for the answer, I'm going to combine a whole number and a whole number, so 16 minus 9 is 7, and then I'm going to combine my I terms, so 12i plus 12i, that gives me 24i. This is my answer. If you were to double distribute like this, which you can do, you will still end up with these same exact terms, and it would give you the same exact answer. Next one. First thing I notice here is I have a negative and a radical, so let's try and simplify. A negative and a radical means an I out front. The square root of 4, hopefully you know, is 2. If I look at the second set of parentheses with the radical, a negative and a radical means put an I out front. The square root of 9 is 3. So now this question really has become 2 plus 2i times 3 minus 3i. So you have a choice. You can do the box, or you can double distribute. 2 plus 2i, 3 minus 3i. 3 times 2 is 6. 2i times 3 is 6i. 2 times negative 3i is negative 6i. And 2i times 3i is negative 6i squared. Again, when you see an I squared, think negative 1. So that's really negative 6 times negative 1, which is positive 6. That's my answer for that box. So if I combine like terms, 6 plus 6 is 12. And if I look at my I terms, 6i minus 6i technically is 0i. I will accept a 12 as an answer, but again, if the question says A plus BI form, you need both a real number and an imaginary number, or a whole number and an imaginary number. Okay, last example we're going to do to practice multiplying. Again, it's your choice. You can either double distribute like this, or most kids lately seem to like this box method. So I'm going to write 5 and then plus I radical 5. And then this becomes 2 plus I radical 5. 5 times 2 is 10. 2 times I radical 5 is 2I radical 5. 5 times I radical 5 is 5I radical 5. And this last one gets a little tricky. We're going to multiply the fronts. I times I is I squared. Multiply the radicals. 5 times 5, 25. Now we're going to simplify a little bit. I squared is negative 1. I hope you realize the square root of 25 is 5. So if I multiply them, negative 1 times 5 is negative 5. Now we're going to combine like terms. 10 minus 5 is 5. Then if I look at these, I radical 5, I radical 5, so 5 plus 2 is 7I radical 5. Again, if you have any questions, please make sure that you write them down and email me or ask me next time you see me.